Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one should be a lot of fun. It's going to be another mock auction draft for you guys. It will be my first 10-team mock auction draft for you guys. So for those of you playing in 10-team leagues instead of the standard 12, like I do most of the mock drafts in, this one will be a good video for you guys to refer to. This is on ESPN, so probably the most common platform for everybody. I don't know, it's tough to tell between Sleeper and ESPN, which is the most popular these days. I think ESPN is, but I think maybe the people that are more into the weeds maybe do it on Sleeper a little bit more. But obviously a great reference point here. We've got a standard roster and a standard scoring system here. So full PPR, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, and a single flex to go with 7 bench spots. Should be a lot of fun here. In terms of the differences between 10 and 12 team leagues, the main thing here, especially in a roster like this where your roster size is not all that big, there's typically going to be at least some decent waiver assets over the course of the season. And the advantages of just having those like top tier players are a little bit higher in this league format like this. So for me personally, I'm much more willing to be very aggressive early on in a smaller league like this. I'm also more willing to go towards like a high-end quarterback, high-end tight end, just because they make up a smaller percentage of my roster, or a larger percentage of my starting lineup here when you got a small build like this. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Typically, in a lot of the builds I've been doing here, especially in a full PPR, I really like going with a hero RB build. I'm not gonna force it, obviously, but someone like Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs, that's really enticing. Pairing them with a couple really solid wide receivers, definitely something I'm kind of looking to do here if we can. CD for 50 is interesting. I got no problem doing that, but I want to see if we can get a little bit of a better value there a little bit later here. So let's see, Jamar Chase, 57. I've got no problem with that, obviously. He's a fantastic asset. We had CD go for 50, so there's nothing wrong with paying a little bit more than that for Jamar Chase. And you can certainly do that in a full PPR. Again, 10-team league, I'm a little bit more inclined to do it, but I don't want to overpay. Typically, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be looking for the best values to present themselves. And, the overpaying just a little bit and doing that early, it makes it a little tough because then you're out of money and before you have as much information. So I prefer to be a little bit cautious early on. Don't have to be, obviously. You definitely want to make sure you're not letting the value pass up, but it's just something good to keep in mind. Bijan, I am just incredibly high on this season. I feel really good about leaving my draft with Bijan, and I'm going to feel pretty good getting him. I'm not going to overpay because I think he and Jahmyr Gibbs are like the same tier for me, right? So because I think I'm willing to pay the same amount for either one of them. I don't have a strong lean either way. Because I saw Jahmyr Gibbs still on the board, we saw Bijan go a little bit higher. I'm going to hope I can get a value here. So we saw Bijan go for 57. I'm not going to force it, but if I can get Gibbs for like 55, 56, I'm going to feel good about that. I'll feel like I got the same player for a couple dollars cheaper. So we're going to see what we can do there. There's 56. I'm not going to go any higher. All right, we're not going to overpay there. So okay, we're past tier 1 of running back. It's just something good to keep in mind. We're also, in my mind, at this point, sort of past tier 1 at wide receiver. I think it's fair to knock Jefferson out of tier 1 just with the hamstring injury, some questionable reports surrounding J.J. McCarthy. I don't think I'll be looking at Jefferson. McCaffrey, I'm just too scared of. Maybe I'm a coward, but I just can't pay full price like this. Like, I would rather have Achane and I'd rather have Genty if I'm going to go running back. Both those guys are way cheaper, so I'm not going to be the approach I take here. But we still want to make sure we get out of this round, or this early part of the draft, with a player we're super excited about. Let's see. So if we look at running back, I'm going to feel really good about leaving this draft. Actually, Chase Brown is just such a screaming value on this platform right now. ESPN needs to fix it, but until they do, I'm going to keep hammering Chase Brown in every auction draft I do. $25 is crazy. Like, he's being drafted ahead of Kyren in a lot of drafts. I think it's fair to, in PPR, to have him ahead of Derrick Henry. Fair to have him ahead of even Bucky Irving if you wanted to. There's a case to be made he's top 8 running back in full PPR. I'm absolutely going to take the value here. I'll overpay. I'll go up to like 35 because I think he's right in line with that tier, and he's just by far like the clear, most obvious value. And if he's my running back 1, I'm feeling really good about that, and that's really cheap. So great value there. I'm just going to feel really confident in him. And I like nominating the guys that I'm like excited about a little bit earlier. I know they get a little bit overbid, but you also find yourself in a spot where you get the information earlier. It's nice to know whether or not you're going to get the guys that you're targeting before you make other decisions, right? So making sure I got that value. Yeah, I overpaid a little bit, but I still feel fantastic about that. And I feel like I got a really great shot at having a top 10 running back with that guy. Puka, I'm really worried about the Rams. I think that the back injury to Stafford, it's been a constant drumbeat all offseason long. He had to get an injection just to manage the pain. I don't love that at all. It just has me a little bit concerned. Just because Puka himself has injury risk, you tie that in with the already injured Matthew Stafford. If we go down to Jimmy Garoppolo there, it's not going to be a very fun experience. So I don't want to do that. I'm definitely looking at. I need a value to present itself on Puka. I'm not going to pay full price for him. I think I would prefer guys like Brian Thomas, like Malik Neighbors, like Amon Ra, Nico, all those guys. I think I prefer over Puka right now, just because the risk is a little bit too much for me. About a sneeze, I think. Maybe. Anyways, we got Genti up here. I think Genti is a perfectly fine price asset here. I prefer him a little bit more in non PPR or half PPR, just because I think that I don't think you're going to see him catch a ton of passes. Gino doesn't necessarily check it down a ton, and you're going to have Brock Bowers be just a target monster close to the line of scrimmage. So, Genti might catch a ton of passes. It's just not something that I'm super excited about. In full PPR, I feel great about Devon Achane, though. That's a fantastic value if we can get him. I'll easily pay full price there. And then I'm gonna even overpay a little bit. I think he's just still severely underrated. I think, wow. Okay, I'm not going up any higher than that just because that would feel bad spending as much on Achane as like what CD went for. But I think there's a case to be made for that. Like he could legitimately finish as the running back one, especially in a full PPR format. The Dolphins might just be really bad. Their whole secondary from last year is gone. They don't have necessarily the best pass rush. Like that defense could be horrendous. So even if the offense turns it around, you could definitely be looking at one of the worst defenses in the league. I feel really good about them having a great pass catching running back on my roster there. So something to consider. But that being said, Jefferson here, I mentioned the hamstring injury just has me a little bit scared. I don't want to pay full price. Like I have this thing, like sort of a mantra I run by that you can't win your league with these early draft picks, but you can certainly lose it, right? And the soft tissue stuff with Justin Jefferson, not really a huge concern for me, but just drafting a player at full price that's already dealing with a hamstring injury, until I know more, I need to know that he's going to be fantastic going into week one. It's just me a little bit scared. I don't want to do that. Brian Thomas for a bit of a discount. Got to be involved there. Not going to overpay. I think we're in the same tier with Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins, but I do think there's a case to be made for Brian Thomas being the best of those guys. But we're okay there. We'll wait it out. AJ Brown, I'm just not super excited about this year. I think he'll be a little bit better than he was last season, but the volume is just not going to be there. Like typically when I'm drafting a player this high, I want the team's goal to be to run an offense that features them, uses them to their best extent, and that's just not the case with Philadelphia. In their ideal world, they are running the ball 30 times a game, they're playing great defense, and they're winning 30-10 because they're just such a dominant roster. That has me a little bit scared, right? So it just means that, generally with A.J. Brown, you need the scoring to happen in the first half for him. That's really risky for me. It's not something that I want to focus on, so I'd prefer to look elsewhere there. Nico Collins is certainly an option here. I don't want to overpay. Elite Neighbor's still on the board, but I feel pretty good about Nico. I think, we're in the same tier here between him, Brian Thomas, and Malik Neighbors, especially with the injury to Joe Mixon. You're looking at a situation here where Nico might just be so necessary to this offense that like a wide receiver one overall finish is in the range of outcomes for Nico. I'll feel great about him as my wide receiver one. I'm really happy with that start. So now that we've got sort of like the cornerstones of our roster, right? I generally like to, if I can, start with one running back and one wide receiver. I just don't want to be super hamstrung in either position, especially in a 10-team league, right? I want to make sure that I'm at least getting an anchor to each of those positions. But now what I want to do here is I want to take a look at our budget. So we've obviously got $125 remaining. As a general rule of thumb, I want to be budgeting $1 to $2 for each of my bench spots, $1 for my kicker and defense. Let's just say I want to spend $10 on my defense, or on my bench, $2 on my kicker and defense. It gives us $113 for the rest of our roster. That's spread out across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. So that means we can spend about $23 a player. Not going to be exactly like that, but just a good thing to have in the back of our mind. For me, someone I really am actually coming around on, especially on ESPN, is going to be JSN. JSN's a guy that I haven't been super excited about, but that's because the ADP on like platforms like Underdog and just general best ball platforms, they sort of dominate what that ADP is earlier on in the offseason. When you get later towards the actual draft season, a lot of those guys that are young studs, like they end up coming down a little bit in terms of what their pre-draft value looks like and where their ADP ends up being, just because they're, JSN is obviously a bit of a risky pick, and those risky players slip a little bit in ADP relative to what you see in a best ball format where you're looking for all that upside. JSN's got a legitimate shot to be a top 5 wide receiver this year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm coming around on him being a fantastic asset. Like, he's a 23-year-old superstar wide receiver. I know we were super concerned last year about what Sam Darnold would do for for Justin Jefferson. It didn't matter. Super, extremely talented player. JSN's a guy that can win near the line of scrimmage. So like even if the offensive line is horrible, if they need to get the ball out of Darnold's hands super quickly, like how do you think they're going to do that? It's going to be JSN, right? So I think the safest pick actually on Seattle is JSN. That there's no DK, there's no Lockett. Like this is his team. Cooper Kupp is nowhere near the target competition that DK and Lockett were. You got Fant gone. Like JSN's going to be awesome. I feel really good about that. And I'm actually going to get greedy. I'm going to take Derrick Henry. No, never mind. I was just going to see if we could get a value there on Derrick Henry. I think there's a case to be made that typically you always see him just get severely underrated in full PPR because people are like, he doesn't catch passes. And it's like, yeah, but he scores 20 touchdowns and has 2,000 rushing yards, so I don't really care. I think he's still a great draft pick. I have no problem with it. It's just because we got to keep track of our budget here. We've got $87 to go across, or $88 to go across 4 roster spots right now. So, just keeping that in mind. I think typically in a 10-team league, if I can, I want to leave with either a high-end quarterback or a high-end tight end. Just something to keep in mind there. It's not a requirement, but it's just because in a 10-team league, I don't want to be short on both those positions because you should have extra capital that you can allocate towards your starting lineup. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to force it, but like looking at this, like George Kittle looks like a really great value to me here at $20. Certainly going to be at least interested in that. If I were to go quarterback, I think all these guys are fine. They're punched up for a reason, so you could take a look at that if you wanted to. Looking at the other players available, if I want to look at wide receivers, some of the best values that I see on ESPN right now, I think I think Marvin Harrison's a fantastic value. I think Sutton's a great value. I love Pickens and Jameson Williams and Waddle, all 3 of those guys, and McMillan. There's a lot of fantastic values in the middle rounds right now, so I'm okay waiting on the receiver for a little bit. I don't need to take any more of these top-tier guys. Like if there's a value that presents itself for Higgins or London, I'll be interested, but I'm not going to force it. I'd rather wait and take the values that are already there just by pre-draft value on those players. Running back, I think Kyren is certainly interesting. Again, the same thing applies with Kyren that applies to Puka and Devontae Adams, maybe even more so. I'm worried about this Rams offense if Stafford's not there. Kyren is such a touchdown-dependent player that if the offense falls off a cliff, it's going to be really rough for Kyren, especially because he doesn't really catch passes. So, in fact, just like a week or 2 ago, I put him in he made the best draft pick in the 3rd round for me when I was doing my best draft pick by round video. I would probably change my answer to that question right now. I just think because of all the concerns surrounding the offense in Los Angeles, I think that most negatively impacts him and Devontae Adams, more so than Puka. Puka's more the possession guy. I think the targets will be there, even if Jimmy Garoppolo's there. I think you'll still get a low-end wide receiver 1 production out of Puka, but if you're looking at a situation where Kyren is a touchdown-dependent running back on a bad offense, we don't want that, right? So certainly something to be just keeping in mind. So as we look at the running back position here, Bucky is the clear end to a tier for me. I think if you wanted to try and force one player up into this tier with Bucky, it would be Amari and Hampton. And because Bucky's going for over pre-draft value, again, the pre-draft values aren't everything, right? So don't get too hung up on it. But because I think I could maybe convince myself that Hampton is worthy of being in that tier, I'm okay waiting because I think I'm going to get a better value on Hampton with him as my running back too. And there's other guys later. I can get DeAndre Swift. I like Brian Robinson. I like Travion Henderson. There's some good values later on that I can capitalize on as well. RJ Harvey I like quite a bit, even though he got listed as the 5th string running back on their depth chart. Sean Payton hates rookies. Don't worry, RJ Harvey will be there by the start of the season. But he's got to make the rookie earn it. I'm actually also really coming around on Jaylen Warren, especially in a full PPR format. Just wanted to mention that. I'm going to nominate Hampton and just get him. I'm so stoked about Hampton this season. Keenan Allen signing in Los Angeles is great for him, too. It's just another reason this offense is going to be good. Hampton's going to have a monster year. I want a lot of Amari and Hampton unless his pre-draft value, unless his ADP keeps skyrocketing. But yeah, back to what I was saying about Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren is severely underdrafted right now. I think Jaylen Warren's got an argument to be made that Jaylen Warren should be drafted ahead of Caleb Johnson. He's an explosive player in his own right. I think it's just sort of name fatigue. He's been in the NFL for a while. Hasn't really ever broken out the way a lot of people hoped he would, but I still think he's a fantastic player. and he's clearly way better in pass protection than Caleb Johnson, including all the reports we're getting out of training camp reports are that Caleb Johnson is just doing a horrible job in pass protection. That's not going to fly with Aaron Rodgers behind center. You got a statue in Aaron Rodgers. He's going to hate having Caleb Johnson back there anytime he has to drop back to pass. And I don't see a world where Caleb Johnson earns like starter reps unless he can improve that. And it was a weak point for him in college. He couldn't really there's a reason that he, for all his talent as a runner, there's a reason he slipped to the third round, right? So Jaylen Warren is going to be the clear pass catching back in this offense. This is not a team that I expect to win a lot of games. It's not like they're going to be playing from a lead all year long, right? They're probably about a 500 team. I think there's potential for the wheels to fall off even more than that. And with Aaron Rodgers, you got a statue. Go watch some of the training camp videos of him doing like the ladder drill. It's hard to watch. He's not very quick anymore. Not that he ever really was, but he's slower than he's ever been. He's going to want to get rid of the ball quick, and I think the best way for him to do that is going to be to dump it down to Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren's going to have a very important role in the passing game this year for the Steelers, and he's incredibly cheap. So in full PPR format, I love Warren. I think he's actually going to be one of the best values in drafts. He's like a guy that could probably finish as a top 24 back, and honestly, he's also a talented runner, right? Like I don't want to just pretend that Jaylen Warren's a guy that's going to be forced into just a third down role because we know he's been an effective runner on the ground before. Again, Caleb Johnson, if he can't pass protect, he's not going to earn a lot of snaps. This is a team that wants to run the ball. They're probably going to run a lot of 3 tight end sets. If they're doing that, they should run the ball pretty well. So I like Jaylen Warren. I'm definitely going to be targeting him quite a bit. So while I was ranting about Jaylen Warren, we saw T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, and Ladd McConkey go off the board. I'll talk about Ladd McConkey for a little bit. McConkey obviously takes a small hit with Keenan Allen signing in Los Angeles. I don't want to overreact to that. I think Keenan's going to be I think they're going to move him around quite a bit, right? So Keenan actually played a little bit more outside than you'd have thought last season. Ladd also showed last season that he can do that. You're going to play both those guys outside. If anything, I think the signing of Keenan Allen just sort of nukes any chance that Quentin Johnson or Trey Harris had of being like reliable weekly assets, because now you're down to both those guys at best being the wide receiver 3 in the offense. So I'm not really super interested in those guys anymore, but I think Keenan Allen's going to be like a weekly viable flex option, and then Ladd McConkey probably like a mid-tier wide receiver 2 this season. Maybe that's too low, but it's just, without him having like the clear path for like a 28-29% target share, probably closer to like 23-24. It's just tough to be a high-end asset there unless you're getting extremely lucky in the touchdown department. So I still love Ladd. He's a fantastic player, but just takes a slight hit there with the signing of Keenan. So we've got a lot of players flying off the board here. Quick budget check. We got $77. That means we have $66 or $65 for our quarterback, tight end, and our flex. Because again, I'm not going to prioritize having a great bench, especially in a full PPR 10-team league, right? Like there's going to be a lot of waiver options. And Jaden Daniels is looking like a value here. If I can get him, I'm going to feel really great about him for $24. That's a great value, right? I think this is good a chance of any of him finishing as the quarterback 1 this season. I love that value. For $24, he's basically, you're drafting him like the equivalent of like a late 3rd, early 4th round pick, and I think that's a perfectly fine place to do it, especially in a 10-team league where you're looking to really capitalize on this high-end production. You're going to be able to stream other positions if you have to, and you want to target those high-end assets the smaller your league is. So I feel great about that. And we're still looking at George Kittle as our tight end as well, right? So we've got $53. If we take George Kittle as our tight end, let's just say it costs us $20. That's fine. That still gives me $18 to spend on my flex. I just mentioned there were a lot of guys in the flex spot that I'm still a big fan of. Marvin Harrison is fantastic. I could save some money and improve my bench a little bit if I went. I could go Pickens and Jameson Williams and just play matchups there. That's a good option as well. So a lot we can do in that situation. I'm going to feel really good about it. And I'm going to force Kittle onto the roster here. Unless he gets super expensive, I think there's definitely a path towards George Kittle being the tight end 1 this season, especially with all the injuries to the wide receiver position the Niners are dealing with. I love George Kittle this season. I think he's probably the better value between all the top tier tight ends, between him, McBride, and Bowers. I feel great about that. Definitely going to be targeting Kittle. And, if you just look at our starting lineup, assuming we get Kittle here, that's a fantastic roster. I'm going to feel really good about that. And wow, they're going to let us get him for cheap. Okay. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so we've got $37. Again, we got to spend 12 to 13 on our kicker, defense, and bench. So basically, we've got just over $20 to spend on our flex spot. Looking at all positions, like nobody's going to cost more than that. So we get our pick here. We get our pick of the litter. I think Marvin Harrison is the clear pick here, and then we're going to have even a little bit left over to get ourselves a really solid bench option. So We're going to target Marv, and then we're going to look to probably get a third running back if we can. Travion Henderson's fantastic in terms of an option just because, it gives us a little bit of upside. I feel really good about Chase Brown and Amari and Hampton to start the season. More and more with Hampton, right? Typically, ask me a month ago, I would have said that Hampton's probably going to start slow, but now that you've got Najee missing all of training camp with the injury to his eye from the firework incident, the vet in that offense is now Amari and Hampton because it's not like Najee's been on the roster before, right? He also came over in free agency. Hampton's probably going to be the go-to starter in week one. So I feel really good about those two right away. And then if I go with someone like Travion Henderson or RJ Harvey, that gives me a lot of upside later on in the season, especially for a guy that I don't need to start in week one. So I like that approach. I could definitely see myself going for those guys. But again, I'm going to prioritize the flex spot. Especially in a small league, I'm going to keep reiterating that you really want to focus on just maximizing the output from your starting lineup. Make sure that your starting lineup is as good as it possibly can. I know it's really typical, like people love having depth. They love looking at their bench and having 6 guys that they're super excited about. But just as like an exercise, just go take a look at some of the rosters you drafted last season. Look at the guys that ended up on your bench after your draft and just tell me how many of those guys actually hit. The hit rate on those guys is incredibly low. It's awesome when you find them, but you don't want to build your whole roster or your draft strategy around them. You can find a hit for $1 just the same as you can for a $5 guy. Just make sure that you're prioritizing that starting lineup, especially in a smaller league. If you get to a 12 or a 14 team league, I get it. You definitely want to make sure you have a little bit more to fall back on because the waiver wire is going to be horrendous. But in a small league like this, again, just make sure you got the best starting lineup you can. The rest will figure itself out. Like, you're going to be okay. Maybe you want one bench player you can play so you can play matchups a little bit, but you're going to be okay if you just burn through waiver wires because there's a lot of options over the course of the year in a 10-team league. Then we got Mike Evans up. I kind of think Mike Evans is a little bit of a risky draft pick. I know I kind of feel like this is the year he doesn't get to 1,000 receiving yards. Emeka Egbuka is a guy that I'm super stoked about. I think there's a chance he's just the wide receiver 1 in Tampa Bay. We're seeing it more and more. Rookie wide receivers just come in and assert their dominance right away. Chris Godwin clearly banged up. Mike Evans slowed down a little bit last season. I remember he got to 1,000 yards, but they force-fed the hell out of him in the last week of the season. They were winning with less than a minute left. They could have taken a knee, and they've ran a play to force to get him the ball to get him that catch over 1,000 yards. Really cool. I know they're going to try and do it again, obviously, but you're not going to see him go for 1,300 yards, right? Like, I just don't see that in his range of outcomes. So you're probably looking at him doing his very best to squeeze his way to 1,000 yards. And that means if you want him to be great, you need him to catch 10, 15 touchdowns, probably 10, right? That could happen, but in a full PPR, you're not going to see him be a target hog. Egbuka is probably going to beat him out for targets this season, and he's free, right? So I'm just a little bit out on Mike Evans. I love him. I've got him on a dynasty team. I think you'll probably get 1 or 2 more good years out of him, but the great years are probably behind him, and I'd rather just take a shot elsewhere. DJ Moore is interesting as well. The vibes in Chicago are just not great, though. Like, all the reports are that Caleb Williams is still struggling. There's some rough video going around of him making some errant throws, just some drills. And that was one of the problems with him last year, was just his ability with a clean pocket to hit guys that were open. I'm worried. I think they'll be better than they were last year, obviously, but I don't think they're going to be great. So I still am okay taking a shot on Rome and stuff because there's a shot that he just elevates and becomes the wide receiver 1 on the offense. And if that happens at his current ADP, that's a fantastic value. But I don't just pump the brakes a little bit. Don't get too stoked. I still love taking DeAndre Swift. I think he's a great asset just because, again, the offense can't be worse. He was good last year, but let's not get too stoked about the Bears this year. So our turn to nominate. We're going to put Marvin Harrison up. I want to get him onto the roster here. I feel really great about him this season, especially if he's my wide receiver 3, right? Like, the problem last year is if you're drafting him, he was your wide receiver 1 or 2. You needed him to be a superstar as a rookie, and that's tough. That's a tall order. We were all maybe a little bit unfairly harsh on him last year. Like, 900 yards, 8 touchdowns. Not a bad year by any means. It's just not the superstar year that you wanted. It's not what like Brian Thomas and Malik did. So couple his performance with what happened with some of the other rookies, it just makes him look pretty bad. But I think it's a little bit too harsh of us. So looking at our roster here, I feel really good about this, right? Like, there's obviously not a hole in the starting lineup by any means. I think we got a shot at 2 top 10 running backs, a shot at 3 top 10 receivers, and a shot at the quarterback 1 and the tight end 1. Like, this is a world where this roster is just incredibly dominant. And to boot, we have $20 to spend on our bench, right? Typically, I'd be looking to have about $10 for them. You could even argue $7 if you want to just go to $1 each. So We actually kind of underspent on our starting lineup, and I still feel really stoked about it. Just looking back on it, maybe we could have spent a little bit more um, early. Like we could have, instead of JSN, we could have gotten Drake London. So maybe that's better. But then our bench would be suffering. And again, I don't know how much better Drake London is than JSN. I think if I could redo it, I probably would have done that. But I don't mind this roster at all. I still was super happy with what we've got here. And this gives us the opportunity to actually add one more running back that we like. So again, we got $20 for our bench. That means that we can spend roughly $3 per, or we could spend like $10 on one, which is tempting here. $10. No, okay, I'm not going to overpay for him here. I liked DeAndre Swift quite a bit, but again, I think he's more of like a safety pick. If I wanted to go for some upside, like I could probably go, and I might do this. I might go Travion and RJ Harvey. I just go straight upside. 3 rookie running backs, it's kind of a fun build too. Um, and again, that I'd still have $7 left for the other 5 roster spots on the bench. Feel pretty good about that. And then between those two, I'm probably going to be able to flex one at some point if I need to. Gives me the depth I need, and having 4 really great running backs that can also catch the ball. Which again, in a full PPR, I'm absolutely targeting that. I want backs that are going to catch the ball. Both Travion and RJ Harvey are going to catch a ton of passes this season. So I like that route. I think that's probably what I'm going to be targeting unless I see a value present itself somewhere else. Looking at wide receiver here, again, so I'm going to have $7 for about 5 picks. Not going to be able to get too expensive here, but there's still some really great options. Taking a look here, Keon Coleman is rising for me a little bit. You just have the injuries to pretty much everyone in the receiving core except him, so more reps for him. That's obviously going to be beneficial. Josh Downs for $2 is great. I mentioned Igbuka. I want him badly. I think he's going to be fantastic. Trey Harris, I'm a little bit less optimistic on after the Keenan Allen signing. However, Keenan Allen for $2, that's perfectly reasonable. Jaden Reed for $2, that's fine. I want him to be a full-time player, and I don't think he's going to be, so that sucks. Couple deep dives here, deep cuts. Pat Bryant is a guy that I like quite a bit. Demario Douglas, I think, has a great shot to be incredibly valuable in a PPR league. It's disgusting, but Deontay Johnson is getting a lot of really great reports out of camp. And we know he's a really good receiver, right? So if you have Joe Flacco there, like you could convince me that Deontay Johnson is better than Jerry Jeudy. Like, he's had a better career so far, right? And if that's the case, if Deontay Johnson comes in, he's the wide receiver 1 for Joe Flacco, and he's free in drafts. Like, obviously his head's not on straight, which is not great. But if he could just get it together and start acting like an adult, he could actually be really good for this team. So Deontay's a guy, he's definitely worth like a late $1 dart throw. I've got no problem with that at all. I like Kyle Williams quite a bit. If you want to take a dart throw on a guy like Luther Burden, I've got no problem with that. Like, it's just upside shots, right? Especially when you get this late, again, in a full PPR and a smaller league, there's going to be plenty of guys you can pick up and flex if you need to. So don't go for the safe picks in a 10-team league. You're going to be able to find guys off the waiver wire every single week you can throw in and start in a plus matchup and just hope for 10 points. And I'm fine with that. I'd much rather take guys that have a legitimate shot to be great. So like I'm not gonna draft De'Ami Brown in a 10-team league, right? Like, he's a wide receiver 3 for an offense. I think he's going to be a decent asset in best ball. Going to have a couple spike weeks, but he's not a guy that's really going to. There's no chance for De'Ami Brown to go out there and be great, right? So what's the point in taking him? So we're going to go Travion Henderson here. I feel really great about him. Going to be a great running back 3 for us, and honestly, I think he has a lot of upside there. I think people are like, there's a chance he's the wide receiver 1 for this team. Like, that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but they don't have any like super reliable pass catchers. We're sort of betting on Stephon Diggs coming in and anchoring that position, but like it could be Demario Douglas, it could be Kyle Williams. Reports at a training camp that Travion Henderson is being used downfield more than Stephon Diggs. It'd make a lot of sense for them to feature him. Like, he's their most explosive player. He should be a focal point of the offense, and it's only a matter of time. Like, I bet week 1 you get Ramondre out there because you got an old head and Mike Vrabel up there. But if you get Travion Henderson in open space, he's a fantastic asset. The Patriots don't have a lot of explosiveness on their offense. It makes a lot of sense for them to force him onto the field. It's going to be sooner rather than later before Travion just takes over the backfield, and he's just going to be such an exciting player to watch. I'm excited for him. So 6 more bench spots to fill. Taking a look here, again, I think RJ Harvey is a great option. We can certainly consider that. Again, that gives me 4 running backs that I'd love. I'd like to do that, I think, because I think the running backs dry up really quick, right? Like, once we get past, honestly, Brian Robinson, my confidence level in anybody just gets absolutely nuked. Like, I still like Javonte a little bit. I think Spears is a great, like, a great flex option slash handcuff. Jordan Mason's got a lot of upside. Quinshon Judkins, if you just want to wait for the suspension to end, I'm saying suspension, we don't even know yet. There's a lot of uncertainty once you get past Brian Robinson, so certainly something to consider. I could try and save a little bit of money and go with Jalen Warren. So if I went Jalen Warren for $3, I'd have $10 for each of the last 5 bench spots. That's an interesting approach here, right? Because then I could actually sort of get my pick of the rest of the wide receivers. Just having $2 per bench spot is kind of nice, right? You don't get stuck in like a stake draft. So that's an interesting approach. I'm at least considering that. Because I think Jalen Warren's got almost as much upside as RJ Harvey. We know Jalen Warren's good. We don't necessarily know that about RJ Harvey yet. So that's interesting. I think I might actually do that. I give myself another non-rookie. It's kind of fun looking at all rookies, but also it's just tough to know there. So I think that's going to be the plan. Probably looking to go with Jalen Warren there. And then I'm going to look to hammer a couple wide receiver options. Again, I want to target upside here, right? So I don't want to draft who's a guy that just doesn't excite me. Like Khalil Shakir. He's good, right? Or Pittman. Yeah, Pittman's perfect. There's no way that Michael Pittman finishes this year as a top 15 wide receiver. He's probably going to be a reliable flex if things break right. But on this roster, I hope I'm never starting Michael Pittman. So I'd rather just take a guy right next to him in Jaden Reed or Keon Coleman or Ricky Pearsall or Jawan Jennings and hope that those guys elevate and actually see that ceiling case, because that ceiling case isn't there for Michael Pittman. So once you get to your bench, especially in a smaller league, just target upside like crazy. It's okay if you're cutting these guys in week 2, right? Like if Keon Coleman comes out the first 3 weeks, 50% snap share guy, you see Curtis Samuel, you see Josh Palmer, you see Khalil Shakir on the field a ton, then okay, he didn't elevate, he's still mediocre, and you cut him, you move on, right? But there's a chance that Keon Coleman goes out there and he leveled up going from year 1 to year 2, becomes a clear red zone alpha in this offense. Like Keon Coleman could go out there and have a 10 touchdown, 1,200 yard receiving season. Like that's in the range of outcomes. It's not for Michael Pittman. So that's just the kind of pick I'd make, even though like I bet in the median case, I bet Michael Pittman actually outperforms Keon. It's just not going to be in a meaningful way, so I'd rather take a shot on someone that actually can crack my roster and be the reason I'm good in fantasy instead of just be the reason I get 10 points 1 week in my flex. George Pickens is going to be fantastic this year. This is like one of the first drafts that you have done for you guys where I'm not like taking him. He would have been interesting for me. I've had no problem doing that. I just sort of wanted to show you guys some different players too, but I think he's going to be great this year. I've had no problem forcing him onto the roster. I think he's got a shot to be a top 15 guy this year, and I'm definitely just targeting him like crazy. I mentioned RJ Harvey. I think he's going to be really good this season, but I am a little bit worried about a slow start. Sean Payton clearly likes J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is listed as a starter there. That's just worth noting. So let's see. I want Jalen Warren. If we get him for 3, I'm going to feel pretty good about that. I'll even go to 4. So we'll see if he comes to us there. I think Warren's got a shot to be a top 20 guy. He's going to be incredibly involved in the passing game. Like they don't have a wide receiver 2. Like if Jalen Warren finished second on this team in targets, like you told me you were from the future, and you said, hey, in 2025, Jalen Warren's the number 2 wide receiver for the Steelers. That's not a crazy statement, right? Like that could happen, and if that happens, he's going to be an absolute steal in drafts. So I just want to keep him in mind, and I haven't really been thinking about him like that up until like maybe a week ago. When I was just thinking about it a little bit more, we saw the reports come out about Caleb Johnson not being good in pass protection, and I don't know why that was like news to me, because we knew coming out of college he wasn't, and I think people just get really excited about the rookie. It's tough to look at the guy that's been there and think he's got a shot to be the number 1, but like this is a team in Pittsburgh. They're clearly all in this year, right? They're not looking to develop players. They're going to play the player that they think gives them the best chance to win. And from where I'm standing, I think that best player is probably Jalen Warren. So I think Warren's the guy that you want in that backfield, especially at cost. I'm going to have no problem hammering that there. So I like that. So now we've got 5 more bench spots to fill. We're going to want to make sure we get a couple more wide receivers, because obviously we only have 3. We're starting all 3 of them, right? So we've got nothing to use on our bench here. So taking a look at some wide receiver options, Igbuka is going to be a clear target for us. I love Igbuka this season. I think he's got a shot to be a top 20 guy. He's got a shot to be the wide receiver one for Tampa Bay, and you're getting him for a crazy cheap discount. So I love him. Pearsall's a guy that I'm interested in. I mentioned Jaden Reed as an upside option. Coleman's an upside option. So those are good targets here. Jaden Higgins I like quite a bit. Even with Nico Collins, I've got no problem taking Jaden Higgins. It's sort of like a handcuff to your wide receiver, but like if he blew up, if he ended up being awesome, you could theoretically play both him and Nico. You wouldn't want to necessarily on a regular basis, but like it's not bad if you're playing T. Higgins and Jamar Chase every week, so you could do worse than that. And again, it's sort of like a bit of a safety net too. If Higgins blows up and you just don't want to be starting both of them, you trade him. If Nico goes down, you get really glad you have Higgins. So I'm okay taking both those guys for sure. Jordan Mason's a guy that I'm definitely going to target here as well. One other thing I'd just mention, you don't have to do it by any means, but I'm still open to the idea of taking a second tight end and a second quarterback if it's a certain guy that you think has enough upside that it's worth justifying. So, like for me, I think if I really wanted to, you could justify taking Tyler Warren here. I know I've got George Kittle, but if Tyler Warren breaks out, like I think he's going to, you're going to feel really glad that you have both him and Kittle. That's a ton of trade value you can get out of them. So that's interesting. At quarterback, I think the perfect quarterback to draft when you need him, you don't need him at all, right? If he's a quarterback, you just know you're not going to start unless a crazy outcome happens. I think Anthony Richardson needs to at least be on draft boards. It's seeming more and more likely that Anthony Richardson is going to start week one for the Colts. And when Anthony Richardson is starting, he's good for fantasy. I know he's mediocre for football. Mediocre is probably a generous way of putting it. But like in fantasy, mobile quarterbacks are incredibly valuable. He's going to be free in drafts, especially if he's your quarterback too. I love that. Like there's a reason he was a 5th round draft pick in fantasy last year, right? We know what that ceiling case is. They added weapons this year. You got Michael Pittman healthier, Josh Downs healthy coming into the year, Tyler Warren probably the best rookie tight end in the draft, at least in my mind. I know you got Loveland there too, but you're adding a lot of pieces. You've got a healthy Jonathan Taylor, and apparently all the reports out of training camp are that Anthony Richardson looks really good. I'm not going to get too excited about that, but like Anthony Richardson deserves to be drafted in every single draft. You can cut him after week 3 if he just looks horrendous, but there are very few quarterbacks that have the ceiling he does. Like, there's a path for Anthony Richardson to be the quarterback one in fantasy. It's not a very likely scenario, right? But if he were to start all 17 games, and in that scenario, he's probably a top 5 quarterback because that means he's playing well enough to keep the job. And we know that means he's running a ton. He's obviously throwing the ball a little bit better than he was last season. Richardson needs to be drafted. I'm just going to keep hammering the table on that. Like I mentioned him as a sleeper really early on in the offseason, even before he'd come back from the shoulder injury. I don't forget about him, right? I know it's easy to because he's been so bad, but don't forget him. One thing I'm going to do here, pre-draft value for Igbuka is $2, so I'm going to nominate him for 2. That's just a little strategy you can do, especially against CPUs, but same thing applies when you're drafting up against real people, is that if you only have $2 to spend on a player, which I'm hoping to only spend 2 on Igbuka here, nominate them for 2, because if you nominate them for 1, someone else is going to bid 2, you'll have to pay 3, it just kind of sucks. Costs you $1. So this way I save myself $1. That $1 could be really valuable later on, especially as we try and build out a little bit of a stronger bench. So I like that. Igbuka is my first wide receiver on the bench. I feel really good about. Got no concerns there. I think Igbuka could be incredibly valuable right away. One thing I'll note, I know I was saying I'm okay taking a second tight end or a second quarterback. Don't do both unless you've got a really big bench. I'm open to it, but like if you draft Warren and Richardson, it's going to be hard to convince yourself you can cut either one of them. And then it's just a bit of a bench clog. I mean, you could probably cut Richardson pretty quickly, but Warren, like it'd be reasonable to assume he's going to take a few weeks to come on strong. So you're going to want to hold on to Warren for a while, and it just gets to be a clogged up roster if you've got too many of those assets. So I recommend not doing both. You can, but just understand that bench spots get thin quick, especially early on in the season. The best waiver wire assets present themselves over the first couple weeks of the season because that's when the most surprises happen outside of injury, right? Like the handcuffs will still be valuable later on in the year when a starter gets hurt, but early on in the year is when the most guys are just going to come out of nowhere. So you want to be able to drop some guys, and if you have a couple guys like those guys, like those backup quarterbacks, those backup tight ends on your bench, it's tough to convince yourself you should cut those guys, and it's going to make it so you might miss out on some studs. So just keep that in mind. Again, not saying you can't draft 2 of both positions, but it's just a little bit tough to do that there. So continuing to look around here, Brian Robinson for $3 looks incredibly enticing. I want to consider that. That would probably be my last running back. That's just a nice stabilizing asset on my running back room that I feel really good about. So we can certainly consider that. At receiver, more guys I'm still excited about. Again, Coleman's awesome. I think we could convince ourselves that Pat Bryant's got a path to success. Again, it's sort of an upside pick, but it's worth looking at. I wouldn't mind going Anthony Richardson for $1, or Tyler Warren for $1. I think actually on this roster, I'd probably prefer to go the Tyler Warren route for $1, just because George Kittle is a little bit sketchier in terms of his ability to stay healthy the full season. Fingers crossed, Jaden Daniels doesn't do the same as well. But if I'm betting on one of those two guys to play 17 games, I'm going to put my money on Daniels over Kittle. So I'd rather have security at the tight end position before quarterback here. So I think that's probably what we're going to look to do. With our 4 bench spots here, we're probably going to look to get Brian Robinson, probably going to try and grab Tyler Warren here, and then we'll have 2 bench spots left to fill out. Going to look to hammer wide receiver. We'll have $4 left for those 2 spots, and I'll probably be looking to go Ricky Pearsall and Keon Coleman. We do those 2 guys. I think there's a lot of upside associated with them, and I think we'll know pretty early with those guys as well, right? Which is sort of the kind of guy I want to have on the back of my bench. If Pearsall comes out and he's a 40% snap player, which wouldn't make any sense early on, it should be him and Jennings are the only 2 they have. But or Keon Coleman's a better example. I think we're gonna know early on in the year if those guys leveled up or not. If they didn't, you're gonna feel better about cutting them than you would about someone like a handcuff running back, right? Like if I draft Tyler Algier, that's fine. It's not a bad pick by any means, but you can never cut him, right? Because if you draft Tyler Algier, you guys know how fantasy works. The week you cut him is the week Bijan gets hurt. So you're going to be beating yourself up with that. You're going to feel like you can never let go of that guy, and it's going to make things a little bit tough. So just keep that in mind. I like having guys that we're going to learn a lot about early on in the year, as to where when you have a lot of handcuffs, I'm okay taking 1 or 2, but if you've got a bench full of handcuffs, especially early on in the year, that's how you end up with a roster that you can't really change because you feel stuck with those players. As you get closer to the playoffs, closer to the end of the year, that's when I want to start hoarding those handcuff running backs that end up on waivers, because at that point, that's the only path towards someone being super valuable on waivers, as to where early on in the year, there's going to be enough stuff that's going to float around and change that you can definitely just find some guys that went undrafted that end up being really good. So just keep your eyes out for that for sure. So our turn to nominate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my baby boy, Tyler Warren. I love Tyler Warren. He's going to be so good this season. I think that there's a chance that he ends up being a top 5 tight end this year, and I don't think you can say that for anybody else being drafted this late. So, he even has a path towards cracking into the top 4, joining that tier 1 of those top 3 guys. It's not likely just because this offense probably isn't going to be super fantastic, but it's in the range of outcomes there, and I definitely just want to make sure that don't forget about him just because he's a Colt. He was drafted to be great. A lot of people forgot about Brock Bowers last year because he was a Raider. We saw how that worked out. Ended up being the tight end 1 on the year. So don't get too hung up on the fact that he's on a bad team. Great players can overperform bad situations all the time. Just, I think Tyler Warren's a great player, and I don't want the fact that he's a Colt to overshadow that. We're getting to the point of some defenses being nominated. I'll do a video at the closer to draft season. It's probably August 20th. In fact, count on that. On August 20th, a video will go out outlining which defenses I'd be drafting. Basically going to be a defensive streaming video. I never advocate for drafting a defense early or spending a lot of auction draft dollars on a defense, but it's really important to understand what that starting schedule is going to be like because, for example, the Bills and the Ravens both probably have really good defenses. They play each other in week 1. You might spend 2 or 3 auction dollars to get one of those 2 defenses, and then in week 1, you're going to feel really gross about starting them. So just keep that in mind. I'll go over the opening season schedules for some teams, highlight which defenses I like early on in the year and which defenses I think are going to have some struggles. So keep that in mind. August 20th, I'll put that video out. I think most of us draft after then, so hopefully that's valuable for you guys. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun, and definitely that's how I recommend doing it. I highly recommend streaming defense. It's just a way better of value approach to drafts. You don't want to be wasting a high caliber pick on a defense. We never really know defenses with a high level of certainty heading into the year. Like, we think the Steelers are going to have a good defense this year. We think the Eagles are going to have a good defense, but like, you're one TJ Watt injury away from the Steelers defense not being good, or maybe the Eagles' strength of schedule catches up with them this year and they end up giving up a lot of points. Like, it's just tough to know. Like, defenses year to year change quite a bit. I don't want to spend high draft capital on them, and I'd rather just play matchups each week. So that's my recommendation. Again, keep an eye out for that video. It'll come out on the 20th. Travis Hunter's super interesting. For $3, I've got no problem doing that. I don't know if I'll get it. Okay, cool. We got him. That's fun. I have no problem with that. Like, the upside's clearly there. Reportedly, he's a starting wide receiver and a backup cornerback on their roster, at least per their depth chart. So we'll see how much that sticks around. Like, obviously, it's tough because if you had a situation where a cornerback went down on their roster, it might force their hand towards playing him at the quarterback spot. So there's obviously risk associated with him from an injury standpoint, even in terms of like his own teammates getting hurt can definitely negatively impact him. So it's a little bit concerning, but again, the price tag's right. I got no problem with it. Oh yeah, Brian Robinson for 2. That feels awesome. So one more spot to fill here. We've got plenty of bench running backs. I want to take one more upside shot at a wide receiver. For me, that's either Ricky Pearsall or Keon Coleman, and I personally like Pearsall quite a bit more. So we're going to go with Pearsall here, and then we'll go kicker and defense, and I won't make you guys watch that because it's not going to be worth your time. So yeah, overall I feel really good about this roster. Again, it's tough to really know how your roster turned out in a 10-team league, because in a 10-team league, everyone's roster should look good. But that's why I advocate for making sure that you're loading up on upside, prioritize your starting lineup in a 10-team build, just because, again, every team's going to look great by the end of it. You want to make sure that you're going to be prepared to start out the season hot, have the best starting lineup you can, and then understand that waivers are going to be very valuable for you. So yeah, I love this team. Actually, I feel really great about it. At quarterback, we got Jaden Daniels. At running back, we've got Chase Brown and Amarian Hampton on our starting lineup. And then in our bench, we have Travion Henderson, Jalen Warren, and Brian Robinson. So 3 guys I feel good about starting. At receiver, in our starting lineup, we're starting Nico, JSN, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Then on our bench, we got some nice upside there with Igbuka, Travis Hunter, and Ricky Pearsall. At tight end, we have George Kittle and then Tyler Warren on our bench. And then we'll obviously fill this out with kicker and defense later. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments below. I love interacting with you guys there. Let me know what you guys think of this team. If you have any other draft formats you want to see mock drafts done for, let me know. I'll try and get all of them done as I can for you. I draft or play in almost every format anyway, so it's good practice for me. I had a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this. It's just fun to see how things are going to shake out. So yeah, a lot of fun here, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Like I said, there's going to be a lot more content coming out. Draft strategy, hot takes, sleepers, breakouts, values, busts, all that stuff. It's going to be all there, 3 videos or more every single week, so make sure you guys don't miss it. There will be even more than that during the course of the regular season, so we're going to have a lot of fun together and hopefully win some leagues together if you guys stick around. So appreciate you guys. If you made it this far, hopefully this was a bit helpful for you guys. Give it a thumbs up. It takes a lot of time to do all this for you guys, so it shows me that you guys like what I'm doing. And I'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.